Mark Leibovich joining us from the Times newsroom in Washington. And Mark, full slate, as I mentioned, of meetings for the president-elect today. We just mentioned the name, Hawaii Democrat Tulsi Gabbard, on the list. She would clearly break the mold of all nominations and appointments we have seen thus far. Cosmetic or something more?
Well, I mean, we don't know. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is, she's not just a, Democrat. I mean, I think she was the deputy DNC chair for a while. At least she was very high up in there. She supported Bernie Sanders for president. Very strange, certainly very interesting meeting. I think one thing that Trump clearly enjoys is just the intrigue around this. I mean, when you're president-elect and you're sitting there, you can pretty much get a meeting with anyone, and it has the appearance of something of a kissing of the president-elect's ring. Whether it amounts to anything, who knows? But I think, if nothing else, he likes he likes the speculation around it. He likes people to sort of try to wrap their heads around what he could be thinking or what they could be thinking, and it does have the illusion of some kind of pageantry around his new election. So I think he's probably enjoying it on many levels.
Something he has acknowledged, tweeting about finalists for certain jobs. Then another big name met with him this past weekend, of course, Mitt Romney. Thought perhaps, and if we are to believe Vice President-elect Mike Pence, to be strongly considered now to fill the Secretary of State position. Again, it need be noted, Mitt Romney among Donald Trump's harshest critics during the campaign. More cosmetic here, or is this perhaps gaining some steam?
No one really knows. I mean, there's no question there was a great deal of bad blood between the two of them. Donald Trump, I mean, I think there's probably part of Donald Trump that would like to bring on someone like Mitt Romney because he's obviously capable. He also would break the mold of people who were just very loyal to him that he's brought on so far. I mean, it would be one of those, it would look a little team of rivals like him in the same way that Barack Obama brought on Hillary Clinton. I mean, different obviously because they didn't run against each other, but it would have the same sort of feel. I think the bigger question is whether Mitt Romney would take a job like this, and if in fact he did, how would this work? I still think it's a long shot, but the fact that it's gotten this far, and they obviously had a meeting, and I wasn't a fly on the wall, would have loved to have been. Well, I guess we'll learn more about that.
Somebody who certainly was a part of all these meetings is someone about whom you've written for the magazine, Reince Priebus. In your new piece, you point out that the appointments of Priebus and Steve Bannon were announced at the same time. And in it, you write, and I quote, Priebus, in a sense, filled a more exotic role. He would be the chief establishment ambassador for a president whose brief and meteoric political career has been predicated on blowing that establishment up. Quite a juxtaposition here.
It really is. And I mean, I think if you were to look at the unifying theme of everyone that Trump has brought on so far, again, it's people who he feels have been loyal to him, people who he thinks served him well. But Reince Priebus, is the Republican establishment, essentially. I mean, he is the swamp. He is the chief of swamp. He knows, all of the elected officials in Washington, the Republican elected officials, the lobbyists, the donors. I mean, these are the really essence of the class that Donald Trump essentially ran against. Certainly Steve Bannon has predicated a lot of his career trying to blow up. And that, to me, I think is not only exotic, but just fascinating to see how that would work. I mean, the White House Chief of Staff, which has been called the second most powerful job in the White House, second to the president himself, is someone who's essentially a gatekeeper. He's everybody's boss except for the president. He reports directly to the president. And I mean, it's a really fascinating dynamic because we don't know if he's going to be working closely with Bannon or if it's going to be kind of a yin-yang thing where they kind of play off against each other, whether Trump is in fact trying to foment tension and sort of creative dynamic between the two of them. So I think Reince Priebus, who's never had a White House job, who's never really had a political job or never had a government job, he's been basically a Republican Party animal for his entire life and a lawyer. It should be a really odd fit. And when you add to this the wild card of the fact that none of these people have any White House experience at all, the uncertain role of Trump's kids, the uncertain role of Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, the uncertain role of what Trump is going to do and what his day-to-day priorities are going to be. I think it's a fascinating dynamic to look at.
Almost too many X factors to to keep track of. You write about Priebus as being somewhat wide-eyed as well, but you also refer to something that he shared with you really throughout the campaign when it was thought perhaps he was on the outs with the now president-elect. Something he would often make note of: Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and the party is the party. Where does that idea stand now?
Well, I mean, basically 180 degrees different. I mean, when you are the chairman of the Republican National Committee, as he's been for the last 4, 5, 6 years, he has to protect the party, and it doesn't belong to Donald Trump. I used to torture him and say, is this Donald Trump's Republican Party? And he would say, no, it's the Republican Party's Republican Party. And he would resist that. When you're White House Chief of Staff, as Andy Card, who was George W. Bush's Chief of Staff for many years, told me, you serve one master, and that is the President of the United States. And essentially, Priebus is now the chairman of the Trumpian National Committee.
Mark Leibovich, we do have to leave it there, but as always, we very much appreciate your time.
Thanks, Josh.